Hi Bobcats, this is Miss Lee, and today's video lesson is on percent graphs, more specifically percent bar graphs. Please make sure as you watch the video that you are taking good notes. Okay, we're going to use relative frequency tables to create percent graphs, percent bar graphs. So if you'll look at the graph on the left side, it's got the percents listed. It goes from 0%, 10%, 20, all the way up to 100%. So the intervals is going by 10%. Okay, so we're talking about the number of students who attended these universities. The University of Texas, 4 students, which is 20%. Texas A&M, 6 students, which is 30%. So this time, in our last video, relative frequency, we had to find the percent. This time we're actually given the percent. So we'll start with the first one, University of Texas, 20%. So what you're going to do is you're going to draw your bar, and it's going to go from 0 to 20%. That's the University of Texas. Now, for these percent bar graphs, it's usually color-coded or it's coded by designs. If it's like a black and white paper, then there'll be different designs like, I don't know, horizontal lines, diagonal lines, something like that. Okay, in this case, with the video, we can use the color. So the blue represents the University of Texas. So when I come over here to look to see what percentage of the students went to the University of Texas, I look for the blue part of the graph, and it's 20%. Texas A&M, I come up here, they're 30%. Now, we're going to start Texas A&M where the University of Texas leads off. Okay, so where does the University of Texas stop? It stops at 20%. So we need to start at 20%, and from 20% go up 30%. So we'd go from 20% to 30%, that's 10%. 30 to 40%, that's 20. 40 to 50 is 50%. So that's your 30%. So from 20% to 50% is your A&M, which is a total of 30. And you can go through and you can write on here, okay? When you're getting ready to answer questions, you can say, okay, well, this blue section for the University of Texas, that's 20%. And when I go from 20 to 50%, that means Texas A&M would be 30%. Do the same thing for Baylor. Baylor is 20%. So we would go from 50, add 20%, and you get 70%. So there's 20% for Baylor. Texas Tech has 15%. All right, so 10% plus 5%. 15% would fall halfway in between, wouldn't it? So there's your Texas Tech at 15%. Then you have Rice is 1%. I'm sorry, not 1%. Rice is 5%. So there's your Rice at 5%. 5%. And lastly, Sam Houston State University is 10%, which would be listed right there. It would go from 90% to 100%. There's your 10%. And that's your percent bar graph. So everything over here, all of our relative frequencies added up to 100%. When we graphed it, it went from 0% to 100%. Okay. Now we have one that's already made for us. It's already been graphed for us, and we want to answer questions. So again, always look at your key. This one is color-coded. French fries is blue, cheeseburger is green, and so on. I always find the easiest thing is to go ahead and to label the percents. But look at this one. It doesn't tell us percents, does it? It says number of votes, not percent. So this is the number of votes. So how many votes did French fries get? Well, it went from 0 to halfway between the 80 and the 90. I'm sorry, halfway between 80 and 100, which would be 90. Then from 90 to 120 would be what? 30. From 120 to 140 would be 20. From 140 to 180 would be what? 40. And from 180 to 200 would be 20. Okay, so now that we know how many people chose the different favorite foods, we can answer our questions. First one, what percentage of the votes were for pizza? So relative frequency, we just got done talking about percent, didn't we? The easiest way to find the percent is to write a fraction form. What's your part to whole? Well, we know the total number of votes is 200, right? Okay, and how many chose pizza? Well, looking at my key, pizza is the purple, which is 40. So they chose 40 out of 200. As a percent, we need to change that 200 to 100. So we divide by 2, and 40 divided by 2 is 20. So the percent would be 20%. Okay, next question. Which food item had the most votes? Well, that one is pretty easy. Which one covers the most on the percent bar graph, or on the bar graph? And it would be French fries. It has the longest, right? Which is 90. So what percent is that? 90 out of 200. Again, divide it by 2 to turn it into 100, and you get 45. So that would be 45%. And lastly, tacos and pizza combined represented what percentage of the votes? Well, you're going to have to find tacos and pizza and combine them together. Tacos is red, pizza is the purple, so 20 plus 40 is 60, and that's 60 out of 200. Again, our percent's out of 100, so we use a scale factor of dividing by 2, and 60 divided by 2 is 30 out of 100, which would be 30%. All right. Okay, go ahead and pause the video, and I want you to solve this problem. Once you have your answer, come back and check to see how you're doing. Okay, did you select answer choice C as the true statement? If you did, great job. If not, let's go through the other answer choices and see why they are false. So A says more than 50% of the students chose either action or comedy movies. First of all, you're going to have to figure out how many total students did they survey. And the best way to do that is to go ahead and find the percents. Action was 25%, animated was 40%, comedy was 20%, 15% for science fiction. If you add all those together, you get the 100%. Okay, so action or comedy. 25% chose action, 20% chose comedy. That's a total of 45%, which is not more than 50%. B, more students chose animated movies than all other types of movies. So looking at that, my animated is 40. Well, the rest would be 60, right? Because the total is the 100%. So that one is false, which means that C is the correct answer. It's the one that is true. And last example, go ahead and pause the video. Go through your answer choices. Use the graph to determine which statement is not supported by the data. Come back, check to see how you did. Okay, did you choose B as the answer that is not supported by the data? If you did, good job. Let's go ahead and take a look, because this one was a little difficult. Okay, so the first one that said that the candidate that represents the mode is Carter because he had 37.5% of the votes. Okay, well, first of all, looking at your key, Carter is the light shaded gray, so this section right here says that he had 37.5%. You can't actually tell that, but he does have the longest shaded section, so that means he had the most. So that one would be a true statement. Even though we're not quite sure what the percent is, we do know that it is the mode of the data. Okay, B, both Adams and Reza received the same percent. Well, looking at this, Adams is 20% because it goes from 0 to 20. Reza is the black shaded section, which is actually less than 20%. I don't know if it's 17%, 17.5%, but it's less than 20%. So that is the statement that was false. All right, good job, Bobcats.